Good afternoon to you. 406 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, the Attorney General of West Virginia joins us this hour at 4:30. Patrick Morrisey is here. We'll talk about Biden trying to push electric vehicles and destroy great economies like the one in West Virginia. Ed Morrisey, a different Morrisey, is here. I think no relation. 5 o'clock, he's with Hot Air. We'll chat with him about Biden's corruption scandal. There's a new whistleblower who has a video out that is just jaw-dropping in terms of the allegations he's making against the Biden family and his perspective. We'll explore that with Ed coming up. And then Dr. Victor Davis Hanson is here at 5:30 today. We were just talking moments ago what is going on at the White House with this cocaine saga. And the fact that cocaine made its way into the White House at all, a baggie of it found. And of course, everybody started to suspect, one person in particular. But the White House is now is sprinting away, calling questions about if the Biden family had the coke, just like offensive. And I can't believe you would ask that. And it's getting crazy. But then again, the story keeps shifting. Where in the White House was it found? It was found outside the White House, and then it was found in the White House library, and then it was found inside of a highly trafficked area with cubbies, and then it was found in a much more secure area near the Situation Room and the spot where Vice President Kamala Harris is driven to the White House. It's found everywhere. Do we have multiple cocaine findings, or is it just one that keeps moving around like Flat Stanley? You just keep taking pictures of it in each location. What is happening here? For more on this, I want to bring in Mark Morgan. He's the former acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection under the Trump administration. He's a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and he's got some thoughts on the subject. Hello, Mark. Good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, thanks for having me.
What is happening here? What do you suspect about this?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, before I was Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Vince, I spent 2 decades in the FBI. And I think this is important to mention. The United States Secret Service and the FBI, who are working this jointly, the Secret Service is in the lead, they are two of the agencies that are the best in the world at what they do. Part of what they do every day, all day long, is to investigate long-term, sophisticated, complex criminal investigations, oftentimes that transcend continents. I'm confident that in the White House, where every single person that comes on the grounds of the White House is manifested, they know it's the most heavily surveilled house in the entire country, that they can solve this case. And the other thing that anonymous, red herrings, like you mentioned, the area, which, by the way, that area, I've been there countless times as a commissioner. I know exactly where it's at. You enter the White House Situation Room, where some of the high-level decisions are made for this entire nation. Literally, is about 8 feet around the corner from that entrance. When they say highly trafficked, it's not like the day after Thanksgiving at a Walmart, right? It's not that heavily trafficked. Maybe there's 100 people any given day that go through that. Again, I'm confident that the Secret Service, if they're allowed to do what they can do to interview the people they need to, they could solve this.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've experienced visiting the White House and reporting on the visitors to the White House is the White House visitors' logs will always include the White House official who sponsored you in the building.
Correct.
So, first of all, if you were conducting an investigation like this and you had a location and you knew where they were, there's only a very small number of White House officials who would have even sponsored someone into the building over the course of these days. This is an investigation you can do lickety-split. You can talk to these people in no time, right?
Hey, that's exactly right. And I'll go even a step further, Vince, so you're absolutely right, is that like the mainstream media, this is not an entrance that they would utilize. Visitors, that's another red herring. They said, well, visitors come. No. Like when you see the visitor tour of White House Down or whatever it is, or when you go look at the Christmas trees of the White House,
yes.
This is not the entrance that
you enter in the East Wing for that. You enter on the complete opposite side of the building if you're a member of the general public.
That's right, complete opposite side. So again, a lot of these anonymous or red herrings that they're throwing out there is absolutely false. So they can set up, oh, see, it's so hard, we're not going to be able to do it. But look, I'll give you an example. So this is an entrance where the vice president would enter. This is an entrance where, as the commissioner of CBP, I entered, where secretary, cabinet level officials, the secretary of DHS would enter. Dr. Fauci, when he would come in, and Dr. Burke, and the whole list of players we all know. This is the entrance that they would use.
And it's the most kind of out of sight entrance that you can get a car into. So you would drive a vehicle in. You're between the West Wing and the old executive office building, and you can safely get a VIP out of a car and into the building. And that's the location where this was found, we're told.
That's exactly right. In fact, you're exactly right, Vince. In fact, where the gate is from that is literally about 50 yards from the entrance. So a vehicle, especially VIP like you described, will come into the gate, drive less than 50 yards, right up to that entrance, get out, and go in. So again, it is I consider it more of a VIP entrance than a common area as it's been described. Again, 8 feet around is the Situation Room. But here's the question that I have. Is the White House going to allow the Secret Service to do their job? And what I mean by that, are they going to allow them to interview or polygraph if they decide that's needed? The vice president, cabinet level officials, the CBP executive level, my level, are they going to allow the Secret Service to interview those people?
That seems to be the question. And all we're getting is a series of distractions out of the White House this week and claims that, well, don't you worry, the Secret Service is digging into this. But when asked and confronted directly, can you say with certainty this was not the Biden family? They just get on their moral high horse and actually refuse to answer the question. Does that tell you anything?
It does. And look, I heard a Secret Service agent, been in the Secret Service for 20 years, talk today. And along this line, he brought up a very good point, because the whole thing about Camp David and everything, right? Well, Vincent, you know this. Camp David is not that far away. I mean, so you could initially, over a 3-day period, gone to Camp David, left Camp David, and gone to the White House. So that doesn't automatically rule out anybody, right, including Hunter. Now, look, I'm not trying to make it about Hunter. What I'm trying to say is there's an investigation to be had. There's forensic evidence, whether it's fingerprints on the bag. There's digital evidence with respect to surveillance cameras, other evidence, manifest logs, etc. And I'll tell you another thing. Most of the time that somebody that comes in there, especially there are, like you said, there's somebody that has to sponsor somebody to come in. They're in groups. A camera, I'm not saying the camera is going to be exactly honed in on these cubbies where, the cell phones go and where the cocaine allegedly was found. But here's what you do have. You'll be able to tell whether a group of people came in. So you get to interview the group. Hey,
yes.
You'll get to see, and where the cubbies are, this is very important, where the cubbies are, you have to make a clear deviation from the pathway of the door. You go in through 2 double doors and then another set. To drop something off in the cubbies, you have to make a clear, concerted deviation from that path. So if you have people that walk straight in and you're on the camera, they didn't deviate, you can rule them out immediately. Anyway, just standard investigative 101 stuff. Again, this is a straightforward investigation the Secret Service should be able to resolve. So
this kind of all adds up to that there may have been someone who wasn't subjected to routine security screening who was the culprit. Because as someone who's subjected to routine security screening would be put through a number of things, probably both visible and invisible to them when they come in. So I was talking about, just coming in the eastern side, if you're part of like the public tours, you're going through the magnetometer. They want to see if you have metal on you. They've got the dogs around to smell whether or not you have any illicit substances on you. They want to make sure that that's not happening. You walk through a machine that looks like it's blowing air on you and then sucking it on the other side. Presumably to detect these types of things as well. So there's all sorts of stuff that's happening as you walk into the building, presumably to stop illicit substances in particular from getting in, right? Wouldn't that be normally the kind of screening that you're subjected to?
That's right. So Vince, everything you just mentioned is spot on, and that's why the general tourists that they're saying it's BS. You just described how that wouldn't be possible. But here's why this is serious. Here's why this isn't a laughing matter. As a CB commissioner, I didn't go through what you're describing. I never went through a machine that would be able to test for illicit substances. I was never patted down. I had that level where I bypassed that stuff. Right? And so what's possible here, especially like if you're a VIP that comes in a vehicle, comes through that gate that I was talking about, and you were discussing how they pull up and they get out, that's exactly what happens. That VIP in that vehicle is not going through that. That cabinet level official is not getting patted down, as they shouldn't, right? And so my concern is that it's not hyperbole to think that possibly, we don't know yet, still a lot of speculation, that cocaine, it could have been from a high-ranking official in this administration that is responsible for critical decision impacting our entire nation. Vince, that's not hyperbole to say. That's why this isn't a laughing matter. That's why this investigation is important. That's why what we should be hearing from the White House and from the press secretary is just that this is a serious matter. They're taking it serious, and they should look in the camera and promise American people that the White House will fully cooperate with the United States Secret Service, and anything the United States Secret Service needs to do or anyone they need to talk to, they will avail themselves of that to resolve this situation. But we have not heard that from them.
Let me add some information that I'm just learning here. So just a few minutes ago, there was a White House press briefing, not long ago. And during the briefing, a New York Post reporter by the name of Caitlin Dornbos asked, quote, "Can you say once and for all whether or not the cocaine belonged to the Biden family?" Corinne goes on a 1.5-minute rant about how she's already addressed some of this and it doesn't matter. And then she goes on to say that the question, she didn't say it doesn't matter, but she said, to ask that question is actually incredibly irresponsible. That was one thing she claimed to the reporter. The other is she said the Biden family wasn't here. They weren't here Friday. They weren't here Saturday. And then she continued on to say other days of the week. Here's what I'm learning now. According to the White House poll report, Hunter Biden was in the White House on Friday. Hunter Biden, Jill Biden, and Hunter Biden's baby, Beau Biden, named after his brother, climbed into the presidential SUV on Friday, seen by reporters leaving the White House, and the motorcade was rolling towards Fort McNair as of 6:34 p.m. So that would have been Friday evening. Hunter was definitely in the White House. Now, tell me, is it your impression, would Hunter enter his convoy, that motorcade, at that very entrance we're talking about?
It's possible, yes, Vince. I mean, it's possible, as the president's son, he gets to use, other entrants. But it's very possible that he utilized that entrance. That would not be atypical. And again, I want to say something though. Look, I hope no one's suggesting I'm not a fan of President Biden. I think he's destroying this country, especially the border, full stop. But to suggest that it's the president's or
you're being responsible.
Right, that's right. I don't think that's right. But to suggest, and look, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but to suggest a known vivid crackhead that it could be his, that's not a stretch here. That's not offensive. That's reporters actually, for once, doing their job, asking very important questions. And here, I'll do one more thing. Let's visualize this. So you walk in that area, the cubbies of the cell phones. And again, I've been there countless times. So, so I take my cell phone, put it in. Okay, if I'm wearing my Apple Watch, I take that off. Oh, bag of cocaine, let me go ahead and put that in. I mean, that's absurd, right? That's absurd. So it also tells me that someone that's doing that at that very moment isn't thinking clearly. So from my experience is, one of the conclusions I can draw, and some speculation, is that the individual was high at the moment he came in. How stupid, how ridiculous could you be to actually take a bag of cocaine out and put it in a cubby? And that would be parallel to, Hunter Biden.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Mark Morgan, thank you. Very fascinating conversation about what's even possible here and what's likely going on. I really appreciate your time as always, sir. I hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Vince.
That's Mark Morgan with the Heritage Foundation. Now, before I move on to well, I'll tell you what. I'll play it in a moment for you. I've got audio of Dan Bongino. I was just hosting his program, and I played some audio of him. He is on vacation right now, but he's a former White House Secret Service agent. He's a Secret Service agent who's had experience protecting the White House. He knows what's actually possible here and what's likely. I'm going to play his audio in a moment. I want you to hear what he says is going on based on everything he's seen. I think it's kind of fascinating. Cocaine in the White House. How'd that happen? Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent, taking a break from his vacation this week to lay out his theory of the case. Here's Dan.
It's a roughly 18-acre complex. So here's the thing. It's surrounded by magnetometers and checkpoints. They all have numbers and names. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but whatever. Zebra 62 for the sake of this video here. You can only enter that complex through, say, Zebra 62 and Zebra 61 and these other specific checkpoints. You can't get dropped in from the roof. You can't get tunneled in from below. You have to go in through one of those checkpoints. They surround the entire 18 acres. So whether this cocaine was found in the Lincoln bedroom or in, say, the diplomatic reception room, it doesn't matter. Somebody had to bypass a security magnetometer checkpoint to get that in there. Do you understand? It doesn't matter. Once the 18-acre complex is like a ring surrounding the whole thing. The only way to get in is to go through one of those checkpoints, right? So now you have to ask yourself, well, who could have possibly went through a checkpoint and brought cocaine in? And the answer is no one. It's someone who would have bypassed the checkpoints. Well, who bypasses the checkpoints? The Secret Service with the protectees. Biden, the Biden family members, Jill Biden. The Secret Service doesn't go through the checkpoints. They have guns. What the hell are they going to go through the checkpoints for? To detect guns? And they bring the protectees with them. The Secret Service didn't have cocaine on them. So it had to be one of the protectees. There's no other explanation. They would never have gotten through the checkpoint. There's not a chance in hell.
Yeah, so in other words, this is Dan saying in so many words, like Hunter Biden kind of, prime suspect number one here for the cocaine incident at the White House, because he's really one of the only figures who doesn't have to go through any of the security rigmarole at the White House, given his relationship to the President of the United States. So Hunter lives at the White House. Can I remind you of that? Hunter Biden lives at your expense at the White House. That's what he's been doing. How old is he? 53 years old, Hunter Biden? And Biden keeps bringing him to every public event, everywhere. So they'll have a state dinner. The very night that he's reaches this settlement with the Justice Department, he's out hanging out with Merrick Garland, yucking it up, having a good time. Hey, what's up, Mary? Or whatever they call Merrick Garland. They call him Mary. He's like, I'm good, Hunty. They're just hanging out. And then he travels with his dad. He's hanging out up on the, all the balconies and waving to everybody and having a great time. Did you see the video going around this week of Hunter Biden looked like taking a bump of cocaine or something? He's like, every time, this guy's not going to be able to touch his nose in public without people suspecting something now. So that's the latest on the cocaine saga, and these Republicans are asking a bunch of questions. You have Tom Cotton asking the Secret Service to account for every single security decision at the White House. Who is not subjected to this? What kind of minimum security procedures are involved with some of these VIPs? Please give us a list of the people who aren't subjected to this, and you can start the list if you'd like with one Hunter Biden, quite obviously. All right, coming up, the Attorney General of West Virginia is with us, Patrick Morrisey. We'll talk to him about the Biden administration's push to force electric vehicles on everyone and the damage that's going to do to states like West Virginia. That's ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Good afternoon to you. 4:34 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 5 o'clock. From Hot Air, Ed Morrissey joins us. We'll talk about the new Biden crime family information that's going public as a man who's on the run from the Biden administration releases a video from an undisclosed location with some fascinating information. We'll share that with you. And then Victor Davis Hanson is with us at 5:30. Such a wise observer of American politics in our great country. He'll tell us what he thinks today. And you can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. The Biden administration is trying to force electric cars down all of our throats, not allowing the free market to do its thing on this subject. I've got friends who like electric cars, who own electric vehicles, but I'd like a world where they can choose it rather than it be forced upon them. And also, I wish those things were more reliable and available than the internal combustion engine. For now, they're kind of the weaker alternative to the excellent internal combustion engine. For more on the Biden administration's tomfoolery in this realm, I want to turn to the Attorney General of the state of West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, who joins us now. Mr. Attorney General, great to talk to you today, sir.
Hey, it's good to be with you. Thanks for shining a spotlight on this really important issue. I'm glad it's getting some attention. It has a huge impact in the eastern part of West Virginia and all of your listening area.
Yeah, what is going on right now with the EPA, these electric vehicles, and in particular places like West Virginia? You've teamed up with a bunch of attorneys general here.
We have. So West Virginia just partnered up with Kentucky and many other states to challenge this really radical emissions policy that's come out from the Biden administration. And so what the Biden administration is trying to do is completely restructure the entire automobile industry. And they're trying to do so through power that doesn't exist. So they're issuing a regulation to dramatically force these new standards, emission standards on vehicles. And because they're trying to drive the marketplace to 67% of electric cars, and this is ridiculous. We're at about 8.4% right now. They want to get to 67% by 2032. But what that means for consumers is an electric vehicle might cost $61,000. It might be $10,000 more than another comparable vehicle. And all of these manufacturers are now really going to be forced to produce EVs and then to change the prices, make it harder for consumers to afford new cars. It's the most ridiculously absurd position you could imagine.
And there's going to be a lot of impact to that. If you force all the internal combustion engine vehicles off the road, what does that do to the guys who make their livelihood, for instance, car mechanics? It's entirely, if you're working on a computer, which is what these electric cars are, it's a very different thing than the guys who actually work on the mechanics of the internal combustion engine. What does it do to all the gas stations? These are all family-owned gas stations across the country. If you force, all of the internal combustion engine cars off the road, you shutter all of those places. And it's not like it's for a better product. The electric vehicles have very limited distances and long charge times, and that's not changing in the near future. So why is this wise for us?
Well, it's not. And in fact, the Biden administration argument will be, well, wait a minute, you're going to save money because you won't have to go to the gas station all the time. But you're really not, because not only are you going to waste a ton of time because you're going to have to recharge the cars, but it could take you 7-10 years potentially to make up for the difference that you otherwise would have had to pay, because you're going to have to pay through the nose to buy the electric vehicle in the first place. But Vince, it gets even worse. They're doing all this at the exact time they're going after the key energy sources that actually make our power grids work: coal, natural gas, these fossil fuels. So if at the same time you're trying to drive electric utility vehicles, then all of a sudden you're going to eliminate the very power sources that are going to be feeding the electricity to them. I mean, what world does that make sense? None. But None. This is the Biden energy policy. I
mean, it leaves you with the impression that they're doing it on purpose. The goal is to keep you locked in your home, preferably in high-capacity housing, and to rely entirely on the government for mass transit. Because they have just been doggedly pursuing that agenda for years, and this seems to be kind of the perfect confluence of ways to do that.
Well, that's right, and that's part of the reason why I've called for this. I've said that this is an attack on rural America. This is an attack on the pickup truck and the internal combustion engine. And for all those people who are used to getting out on those country roads and driving around, and whether you're in West Virginia, Virginia, or rural parts of Maryland, all across the country, you're going to feel such a negative impact for this at the very time when we're still dealing with the ravages of inflation.
Yes. Talk about how they're actually doing this. I know you said that this is through the EPA rather than the use of a law. How is it that the Biden administration is allowed to get away with this? I realize that, that there are regulations and that agencies will come up with some regulations and will change some things in the country in the way that things are conducted. Obviously, that's already questionable that that's occurring. But something this big, you're going to destroy an entire industry, destroy people's liberty, destroy the way that they use and consume energy, and you're doing it without a single piece of legislation or a single vote on the subject? How is that allowed?
Well, it's not allowed, right? So last year, around this time, we got back our big result from West Virginia v. EPA. That was the huge decision when the EPA tried to install targets and to go after carbon emissions. And the Supreme Court agreed that they lacked the authority to do that because Congress never acted on the topic. So here we are now moving to another transformational type of regulation, not very different from what they tried to do in the past. And the reality is that they're not allowed to do it. Under West Virginia EPA, when you have something this transformative, that's a major question, something of huge political or economic significance, Congress needs to make the decision, not the unelected bureaucrats. So this is going to fail if it gets to court. But here's what happens. These guys try to run out these standards and force the market to move, even though they know that they lack the legal authority to make it hold up. That's why we have to be so forceful and aggressive and seek injunctions early, because we have to call the lie out as it is and block them before the market moves. Because
the market is going to atrophy for the internal combustion engine very rapidly. It's going to, so all this, if it takes years of litigation, those are years when an entire industry is being destroyed and we may never get it back. What are the chances that you can get the Supreme Court to intervene here with any speed? Well, look, right now, this is the proposed rule. So we're following the normal pathway. We submitted the comment letter. It's a Kentucky, West Virginia-led letter, 25 states. And so we submitted this in, and it's the first part of the process. Then the Biden administration will decide how they're going to finalize the rule. Now, let's be clear. The Biden administration is not going to follow what we're suggesting in the rule. They're going to go ahead and finalize it. The good news is that West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia, a lot of other states, we're going to be ready to step up immediately when they finalize that rule, and we're going to go into court, we're going to sue them, and we're going to defeat them. But I think the key is going to be the speed in which we can act and the message that we send to the marketplace. When government is trying to drive all these changes in the marketplace, usually bad things happen. The market should work more naturally, and these guys are trying to force everyone to pay a heck of a lot more than what they're expected to. Talk about a real depression for your standard of living. This is horrific. Also, the Biden administration EPA, as you note, was brushed back by the Supreme Court already. I mean, isn't this in a way just an insult to the judges, the justices on the court, that the EPA would continue to make all sorts of major questions, major decisions without Congress actually being involved? It's almost like they're just giving the court the middle finger. Look, I mean, Biden's been pretty clear. He's flouting the Supreme Court. And so that's why what we can do in the Attorney General's office is we can go and be very aggressive and say, hey, we're going to make sure that these are upheld. Now, we do have some good precedents here because we won West Virginia VPA and we've won a lot of cases. And so we just have to make sure that we're not going to let the Biden administration, all these unlawful policies, gain a toehold. We're just not going to let it happen. Can you talk a little bit about what this would do to our dependency on China? It seems to me, based on these electric vehicles and where they're manufactured and our reliance, especially for rare earth minerals and this battery development on China, it's only going to grow if the Biden administration continues to force us down this road. What actually happens here? Well, that's right, because a lot of the raw materials, when you're creating the batteries, are derived from China. So once again, at the very time when we're worried about China from a national security perspective and a trading perspective, here we go again, right? It seems like China's going to get the benefit of the doubt on this. And so obviously we're now going to be shifting more manufacturing overseas as a result. So look, I think the whole Biden economic policy seems to be to put America last and China first. And that's what you're seeing in this exact context. Look, in West Virginia, we think we have access to some rare earth minerals and other types of things that could be very useful. Other parts of the country do as well. It's going to take some time to develop it. But when you force such market-driving changes within such a short period of time, you don't really give Americans the opportunity to take advantage of these new opportunities. Look, I have nothing to object against electric vehicles. I mean, to be honest, if someone likes an electric vehicle, hey, that's great. What you don't want is the heavy hand of government going after rural Americans and the pickup truck and
internal combustion engine,
Yes.
that's where you say, hey, that crosses the line.
Finally, if they're going to justify a regulation like this, and as you pointed out, they can't, they shouldn't be allowed to do this anyway. They really don't have the power. But if they were going to justify it, don't they have to offer some sort of concrete evidence of the benefit we would derive from it? Like, right? Isn't that important? Like, are they going to tell us how many degrees in warming that we're going to get rid of, global warming that we're going to get rid of if we force everybody into electric vehicles? Do they ever say anything like that?
Well, they always try to make their case, but the math is fuzzy to say the least. But I mean, what ends up happening is they come up with these convoluted arguments that they need to do this yet. Of course, none of this is going to have any meaningful impact on the temperature. And then also think about the arrogance of suggesting that man is going to control all of these things to alter what God and nature has been dealing with for a long period of time. You know, I think this is one of the lies coming from the left to justify the radical climate change agenda. And the reality is that we should always make sure we're taking care of our people and we're adjusting to the world around us. But to destroy industry and to condemn rural Americans, poor middle-class Americans struggling to make ends meet. Wow. I mean, for what goal? For what goal? It's the ideology of the left.
Yep.
So that's why we're stepping up, we're fighting back, and we're going to win.
Meanwhile, like their policy is like there's like pollution all over the border. Have you seen these pictures of like what the border crisis, all the people just littering all over the place? They don't care about any of that. Instead, this is like a constant churn of anti-human policies coming out of this ideology. It's grotesque. I really hope you prevail over it. Thank you very much, Patrick Morrisey, the Attorney General of West Virginia. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right. That's again, Patrick Morrisey. Let's take some calls on this subject. You know, the electric vehicles thing, just amazing. And it makes me almost radicalized against them. I like the concept. It's perfectly fine. I own some tools and stuff that operate off of batteries, you know, limited use kind of stuff. Not super powerful. The most powerful stuff is the internal combustion engine. You ask anybody who's ever tried to power wash with, say, a battery-powered power washer, not really going to get the job done. You need the engine. But this stuff's fine. It works fine. It's kind of amazing, battery capacity and how it's increased. But stay out of it, government. You're just making things worse, and you're destroying the much better options for so many people and for human flourishing. Let's get Don in Alexandria in here, line one. Don, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for the marathon starting at noon that you've been hosting.
Oh, my pleasure.
I want to just note your word grotesque is absolutely descriptive. One of the benefits, and you guys were talking about, well, what benefits are there? They continue to say, oh, we'll save CO2 emissions. Mm-hmm. Electric vehicles begin, because of the rare earth minerals and the enormous amount of energy, and it's all diesel vehicles to do the mining for those rare earth minerals. You start with many tens of thousands of miles deficit compared with an internal combustion engine. And unless your power system is hydro and nuclear supplied, you continue to lose tens of thousands of miles because even if you think you've got wind and solar capacity, sure, you may have capacity, but you don't have the total energy.
The fact that they refuse to even discuss nuclear really kind of gives away the game, doesn't it? This is not actually about sustainable power sources, clean power sources, anti-carbon emitting power sources. It's not about any of that. It's about accelerating human suffering. Because if you actually bought into the full thing that carbon dioxide is a problem, then wouldn't you be pursuing nuclear?
Of course. And nuclear is, as we all know, is 90+% available, whereas wind and solar, even if you got the capacity for any given hour, we know the sun sets, and my goodness, today the wind hasn't blown at all.
Yep.
So at most, you're getting 30%, even if you got the capacity, on average over a given, week, month, whatever you want to measure,
totally.
It's at most 30%. And if the rest of your electricity is coming from coal and natural gas, you're just not saving the CO2 you think you are.
Yeah, get ready for the brownouts. All right, thanks, Don. I appreciate that. A lot of good information there. Let me take one more from Mark, calling in from Orange, Virginia, line 6. Mark, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, what's going on, man? Just a real quick point on as far as the reliability goes on these electric vehicles. So I'm actually a technician for one, and I have one that's down. The battery's failed. It's run its lifespan. The vehicle's a 2012. And just to get the battery replaced, we're looking at about a $10,000 job, and it's about 4 to 5 months lead time just to even get the battery. So you get one, good luck fixing it.
How different is it? Have you worked? Are you also a mechanic on the internal combustion engine vehicles?
Yeah, I do. We do it all, or I do it all. So
how different are the platforms? Because I talked to my mechanic, for instance, and I said, "Hey, you gonna get into this electric vehicle thing?" He's like, "I have no idea how to even work on those. I'm just hoping that the internal combustion engine just keeps on living on."
Yeah, I'm with a dealer. I won't mention which it is, but so I'm kind of forced to learn all aspects of what the new products are and what the current ones are. I mean, even your normal modern day ICE engine is going to be totally computerized. I mean, that's just where the industry is going. So, I mean, regardless, it's going to be a hard shot. I couldn't see them getting all the cars off the road. And even if, they were able to kind of weasel it in, we're still going to be the ones to have to service it. It's still tires. It still brakes. It's still a battery. You know what I mean? So I'm not too worried as a technician as far as job security. I think I'll be all right. But as far as people that would buy them, it's going to be hard to keep them on the road. Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of being forced into all of this. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the call, especially because nobody voted on it. Not even Congress. Like not a single vote. It's just some random EPA jerk who's like, let's force this on the entire country. Let's do the California thing to the whole country because it's going so well. Got a big item today. Gal Luft is a longtime D.C. insider who has worked with people from the Reagan administration, the Clinton administration. He's been all over cable news as an expert commentator. And now all of a sudden, he's on the run from the United States government, the Biden administration in hot pursuit. He says he's got information on Hunter Biden's criminal activities. More ahead as we chat with Ed Morrisey from Hot Air. We'll get into the details.